Hello, everybody. My name is Joel Filderman, and welcome to the Dog Trainers Connection. I am not a dog trainer, but these other people you see here are. We get together, we discuss a topic, come up with some thoughts, some ideas, but we always have an interesting discussion. And for today's topic, trainers, as we said at the end of the last episode, we are going to continue our discussion about our broken dog culture. However, the way that we're going to discuss it this time, instead of talking about what the broken dog culture is, and we talked about a number of things, such as dogs being put into situations where they weren't bred for, guard dogs being, or herding dogs, or whatever, being put into homes and attack dogs, et cetera, et cetera. We talked about some genetics things as well, and talked about the breeders and the business of breeding. But what I would really like to discuss this time is what can you as dog trainers, and as I said at the end of the last episode as well, what can I as a dog owner do about this broken dog culture? I think it was pretty much agreed that the dog culture does have a lot of brokenness, to use a word that probably isn't one. So what can you as trainers do, or what can people in general do about it? Um, so, does anybody want to particularly start today? Go ahead, Bonnie.
Well, I think to give a plug to Dog Trainers Connection and all of us here, that this is what we've been doing for many years, bringing knowledge to dog trainers that they could and then in turn bring it to their clients, to their rescue groups, to groups that they speak with, and just pass this good knowledge and information on. And there's a lot of chaos now. There's a lot of chaos because of the pandemic, because people really want companionship and love dogs, and more people want that company. And I think that that we as dog trainers can continue doing what we're doing, which is helping them find the right dog for them and for their lifestyle, supporting the organizations that are not broken in this dog culture, that the rescue groups, like the ones that Jeff works with, that hire Jeff to help the dog. And then so they know, okay, what kind of person, what kind of family would be a good placement for this dog. So I think, with all the negativity of the brokenness, which it definitely is in large part, that there are a lot of people who are out there trying to do the right thing and trying to, even if it's just one person at a time,
right,
letting them know, hey, before you get a dog, look at the breed, see if it fits with your lifestyle. Support the shelters and the rescue groups that have a behavior department that are interested in placing the dogs in appropriate homes. And the bigger picture of the brokenness, I think that's to come. I think that's maybe government legislation, maybe an organization that's has nothing to do with behavior and training and tools, but is about just dogs and helping people understand the breeds. I'm not sure about that as far as fixing that piece, but I know that we have done a lot over the years to break through the chaos and to get the good information out there. And I applaud all of you and a lot of dog trainers who are so passionate about it and are staying positive about it too, that there is hope and that we can do something about this.
Okay. Is it all about the education? I'm throwing this out to everybody. Is it all about teaching the owners or teaching the dog people? Is this or is there more? Or is it more than just education? Is it more, do things need to be put in place? Do people need to, I don't know. I'm like I said, I'd like to know your opinions on this.
So I watched, I wasn't here for excuse me, for last month's episode, but I did watch it, and I remember the crux of most of it, and
Sure.
kind of got a pulse for what everybody's feel was. And you guys did kind of touch on a lot of different things. And everything always goes back to accountability.
Okay.
That's, as far as I'm concerned. I don't care how a dog wound up in your home. You took on that responsibility. So that's my philosophy, is you take on the responsibility, then you have to do what's required. Right now, some people just, maybe they make a mistake, or
Sure.
like we were talking about briefly before the call started about placement practices can be improved in the rescue community, right? Like things along those lines. But when all those things come up, right, and then you get into the debate of, oh, get a puppy, get a rescue dog, all that other stuff, right? Well, when people talk about rescue dogs and the problems they have, they talk about, oh, the dog's not trained, it's not housebroken, this, that, the other thing. And, we got it when it was a year old, but now it's 3 years old and all these other things are happening. Well, you just described the 12-week-old puppy too.
Sure.
So that argument goes right out the window, and I hate when people use that as an excuse to get rid of their dog, because it can happen with a 12-week-old puppy too. So that irritates me, and it's not a broken dog culture. Eliminate dog. We have a broken accountability culture in the United States. We really do. I mean, and now, I always say, right, there's exceptions to every rule, right? I understand life incidents, catastrophic things happen. Like, I'm not talking about that stuff. Someone passes away, they got to find the dog a new home. There's an inherent risk in something in the household that nobody could have anticipated. Like, I'm not one of these crazy people who thinks, oh, it doesn't matter. There's no circumstance where you need to rehome a dog. No, I'm not one of those. But those are few and far between. That is the minority. The majority of dogs that are rehomed, I call dumped. So rehome makes people feel better. When you dump a dog, right, you lack accountability most of the time. Again, exceptions to every rule. Most of the time, most people have within their capacity to work it out. They choose not to, right? And that's kind of what I was hearing, just again, listening to the call last time, and, whether people, the whole cuddle culture, right? Is one how I refer, like, dogs are babies and stuff. Right. Everyone knows my pit bulls are spoiled. I cuddle with them. I spoon with them. They don't get a damn thing unless they earn it. So yes, they're spoiled, but they got to work a little. That's all. Right. And again, it's easy for me because I live in a very structured environment. It's my life. It's what I do. Right. The average homeowner, or the average dog owner with kids and a house, active household, it's a little different, but everybody has the capacity to make it work. The fact that they choose not to is irrelevant, and you can still cuddle the heck out of your dog and you want to dress it up. That's fine. Right. As long as it comes after treating it like a dog. Right. And I always tell people, before it's a child, it's a breed. Before it's a breed, it's a dog. Right. So you got to start with the dog part. Satisfy its basic instinctual needs, whatever they are, regardless of breed. Right. And if people are unsure, even mutts nowadays, mixed breeds or designer breeds. Is that what they're calling it now? I call them mutts anyway. People want to spend $2,500 on a freaking mutt. All the power to you. Anyway, we can look at a dog and kind of get a feel for what it may or may not be mixed with. DNA testing can certainly help, right? You can have a lab hound mix. You'll know what, genetically what that dog favors, and you lead it that way to satisfy its basic needs, because you satisfy those needs and its desire to do, like you guys talked about last month, the function of whatever it is. You're going to have a happier dog. Forget about
But you need to go back a little bit here. I think that the concept of meeting a dog's needs is great, but I think step back 2 or 3 steps. That how do people obtain dogs? People obtain dogs because they walk in somewhere and that one's cute, I'll take that one.
Right.
There's nobody giving them any guidance.
Right.
There's nobody telling them, maybe that dog is not the best suited for your home. There's rescue organizations that are overburdened with animals, want to see animals go out the door. So maybe they're not as selective as they could be. People today as a culture, going back to the culture idea, Americans as a culture are not as connected to nature as they were at one time. So they have no understanding of basic husbandry of animals. So this killing them with kindness and cuddling them and doing all those things is what they know how to do. But Americans don't know how to treat a dog as a dog anymore. And because what I see here, at least in New England, is everybody's got a rescue dog, which is fine. Wherever you obtain your dog, that's your thing. But the rescue becomes the excuse. The source of the dog becomes the excuse for why they haven't moved forward with the dog. And again, many of these rescue organizations that I see in my area, and I don't know what's happening in the rest of the country. New England is its own little pocket, and we're in our own little thing. I don't know what's happening in Florida or Arizona or Ohio. I can't see all that. But what I see here is the rescues, they give you a dog, they sell you a dog, and then they wash their hands of it. They have nothing else to do with that dog. Whereas back in the day, 30 years ago, when I brought my first Rottweiler home from a breeder, not only did the breeder sell me a puppy, she included 8 weeks of classes in the price of that dog. And everybody who bought a dog from her was expected to come back to her place and take those 8 weeks of classes, whether you did it with your 8-week-old puppy or whether you did it when the puppy turned a year old. That was your discretion, but that was included in the price of the dog. And she was available to us at all times to answer any questions we had on the phone or to show up at her place. She was 35 miles from my house. And I went to her place all the time and, hung around and asked questions. And I had the ability to do that. Not everybody did, but, it's not the same as if you get a dog from a rescue or an organization that once these 30 dogs came off this truck and went into new homes, there's 30 more dogs coming on the next truck. Then they're looking for new homes. They don't have time to help you work with those dogs. So culturally, that has changed, that the source of the dog is not always the source of the information about dogs.
You're comparing
your information from your source. Where do you go?
You're comparing present day rescue efforts with breeding efforts 30 years ago. Compare rescue to breeding today. They all do the same thing.
The breeders I know today are doing the same thing the breeders I knew 30 years ago did, because the people that I, as a dog trainer and having all the experience that I have, the people that I work with are the people that are still doing it the right way, because that's who I choose to align myself with. Now, having said that, there are plenty of people in this world who are producing litters of puppies that are not people that I would really call breeders.
Sure.
They're breeders in the sense that they produce a litter of puppies, but they're not the people who have a breeding program necessarily and are producing for a purpose and have so there are still those people there.
And but have a lot conscientious way of dealing with the dogs.
Right. There's people who produce a litter once every 5 or 10 years. When I need a dog for myself, I'll have a litter of puppies. And that's the best way to be a breeder. That's the only way to be a breeder. Only when you need something for yourself. You shouldn't be selling puppies and you shouldn't be making money at this. That's the current attitude that people have about breeding dogs. And that's a real shame.
You were talking about that last time about the fact that they don't know I think that was you who was talking about that they don't know their dogs anymore.
Right. Yeah. So it's just the culture has changed, but there are still people doing it that way, that old way. It's just really hard to come upon those people. And so where do people go for information? How do they learn about dogs? It's getting harder and harder. And
so you're I hate to nitpick here, but you're saying that those breeders they still exist, but they're harder to find. You just described the rescue community too. So you can't differentiate the two. There are good, responsible rescues who commit to their dogs for life. Not all rescues are dump and goes, right?
That's good. I don't have any experience with them. I haven't seen them here.
Right, but to say it doesn't exist is inappropriate. That's all I'm saying.
I said I don't see them. I didn't say they don't exist. I said I don't see them. I don't know what happens in the rescue.
And that probably, like, I don't deal with breeders. I deal with rescues. So if I need to know about breeders, I'd probably call Pam and ask you some questions, right?
Well, but I mean, honestly, I have had friends say, you know, I'm looking for a Technicolor Whifflehound. And I'm like, you know, I have a friend that breeds Technicolor Whifflehounds. It's a weird breed. Nobody has them, but I have a friend with that breed because I've been around long enough and I've been open to it and that kind of thing. And I will refer people. But by the same token, you know, maybe I don't know somebody in that breed, and maybe you're best off to call the parent club and look for that breed. But, you know, to get it back to culture and dog culture, the culture has changed and it has become harder to find. As much as we're inundated with information on the internet, I read recently, you know, we all thought that the reason the world was going the way it was for lack of information. Well, now you have the internet. So lack of information is clearly not the problem.
Right. And I'd also like to...
And let's look, and I was just going to throw in the topic of what can we do
I'd like
as
to
trainers.
And that's exactly what I was going to say is I'd like to get back to something that Jeff started with, which is that accountability. You know, how can you as trainers or me as a dog owner, how can we make people more accountable? How can we, you know, or is there anything that we can do about it? Or is there anything that we can do to get somebody to do something about it? I think that's really more my question right now. You know, is it on the breeders? Is it on the rescue people? Or is it on the dog owners? I don't know the answer to this. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Steve.
I don't want to, for fear of like being too much, but I think sometimes you got to go there. So I've always had this idea that if chipping dogs was mandatory, right? And when you adopt, purchase, whatever it is, you're linked to that dog via the chip, right? Then, since so many people like dumping their dogs, I would say, in an effort to be accountable, when you bring the dog to Jeff or the SPCA or wherever you're going to dump it, you have to pay. You don't just hand it over. You pay for the care of that animal until it is furthermore adopted by a family. It's your responsibility. Shelters just taking them doesn't provide any consequence for this. You know, at the end of the day, there's got to be some consequences, right? So I've actually said this before, and somebody said, oh no, they're just going to let them loose in the street. And I'm like, well,
I kind of agree.
They're still chipped.
What if you take your car that's all busted down and broke, and then you're like, all right, it's really messed up. I'm going to just take the plates off it, and I'm going to leave it on the side of the highway somewhere. I'm going to put it in a lot, and I'm going to take the plates and walk off.
Okay.
There's a VIN number. You know, now you're getting into doing something illegal, right? And so my attitude is, well, if you charge the person $10 a day for relinquishing their dog, but then they let the dog loose in the street to try to absolve themselves of the responsibility, the $10 a day is $25 a day for doing that, asshole. And they've got to be punished with money, and you got to be able to get to them. Now, I know that there are deadbeat dads and all, because that's what always comes back at me. It's like, it's not just about dogs, it's about kids too. and you can't even catch up with these guys. They won't even take care of their children. I'm like, well, guess what? You know, they do catch up with those guys. And there's a whole bunch of people that pay attention to that. We pay attention to the dogs. So my attitude is, if you take them as a responsibility and you try to absolve yourself of that, it's not happening until that very animal is rehomed. And then the next person takes that responsibility, and it just moves on. But it's not like the shelter. I feel that this whole bring 30 dogs, adopt them out, bring 30 more, adopt them out, is a way for the shelter to bring visitors in and to keep the place floating because they're so worried about money.
Right.
Well, they shouldn't have to worry about that money. That money should be coming from whoever's dumping these dogs, every one of them, right? So, you know, somewhere there's got to be consequences. And I think the only way to do that is to somehow tie the individual dogs to these families or individuals and make those people financially responsible. And if that becomes the rule of the day, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are like, oh no, I'm not signing up for that. And we don't need those people if they're not signing up for that. If they're not going to be responsible, we don't need them. They should get fish, right? Otherwise, you're signing up for that. And if you have to, and you know, you want to be, if you had to relinquish the dog, I mean, if you love the dog and you have to relinquish it for some, you know, honest reason, then you're going to try and find the right home for that dog, right? You're not going to just drop it off somewhere. In any case, you should be financially responsible if you've got to bring it to rescue or shelter or anything like that until that dog gets a home. Is that really going to happen? I doubt it.
I love it though. It's a great idea.
And if shelters were funded by the U.S. government and didn't need to get money, then probably some of these issues wouldn't be broken. And it's just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bonnie. That's like calling a cop because something's happening, but you got to give him $30 when he gets there, right? Because public shelters are funded by taxes, right? As far as like nonprofits, that's a different story, you know, chipping, and most of the rescues that I deal with, they chip their dogs and they never transfer the chip entirely to the owner. It's a joint registration. So if anything ever happens to that dog, they're scanned and the rescue finds out about it. And I've seen that come in handy real well.
Wow.
When people try to dump their dog. Happened to me at Pity Rescue years ago. I got called by Jersey City Shelter, and because the dog was chipped to me. And I was like, those mother. Anyway, but yeah, it could certainly work, Steve.
Yeah, no, and yeah, what you guys are saying, it makes 100%. The shelter I volunteered years ago on the island did the same kind of thing. If the dog wasn't chipped, they had the dog chipped by the vet there. And when the people rescued the dog and that they adopted the dog, whatever, and for some reason they didn't want the dog anymore, it had to go back there. And if it didn't, getting to your point, it's chipped. Someone's going to find out about it. So.
Well, so Jeff, you didn't like the idea of the shelters not having to worry about money, or were you saying that would be a good idea if they were funded and it wasn't about needing to make money?
Municipal shelters it's a public service that tax money goes. That's how they run.
Okay.
As opposed to a nonprofit, we're responsible for generating our own fundraising.
Right. Okay.
Right. So whereas like a lot of public shelters, you'll notice that they'll be like, you know, AB City, right? AB City Shelter is the public shelter, but they might have like ABC Shelter Friends, which is the volunteer organization that supports the shelter kind of thing. Like they'll do stuff like that, you know. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, please go ahead, Bill.
I see where we live, I'm in New York near Bonnie and Joel. We see a ton of rescue dogs coming. We don't have any stray dog problem here. We have tons of imported dogs. Those dogs come from overseas. They come from, most of them seem to be strays from down south. They come through disreputable rescues. They come through some good, you know, the county shelters on both sides of the river are pretty good here. We have, when we talked about where do we start holding accountability, I've got dogs that come to me with health problems from breeders that people spent a fortune because I offer, it's on my website, I offer free acquisition counseling. Whether you're looking for a rescue dog or you're looking to buy a dog, I will help people find a dog for free, with whatever kind of research they need help with. In 8 years, I've helped exactly 2 people find a dog. One was a friend, and the other one was someone who they brought their dog who was putting kill shots on their baby to me. They had rescued it over across the river, and a lady who has this rescue is regularly contacting me to get, free help for training with the dog. She wanted to rehome. They didn't want to take the dog back. What was supposed to be a lab puppy turned into a Great Dane mix that was literally like attacking a 4-month-old baby on the floor and grabbing it by the belly. And I told her, you take that dog back to them tomorrow. Don't ask for questions. Don't have to, just bring it back. And they rehomed that dog a week later as a child-only home. And I had never, I've suggested taking dogs back because people can't live with the dog that's unsafe, that's coming through rescue. And now I've got a client who's spending tens of thousands of dollars to get a doodle puppy healthy, who's got some horrible autoimmune thing that we've known about since the dog was like 10 weeks old, that there was something not right. But nobody's holding those people accountable, and they're rehoming those kinds of dogs, and people are dying every single day. There's somebody that dies in this country from a dog bite. I track dog death statistics. It's a really weird thing, but the culture is so broken that I don't know where to fix it. I know that dog trainers can continue to, I know where every dog that comes into my programs was acquired from. I know who their vets are. I know what shelters they came from. I know who has patterns of adopting and out unsuitable dogs that, people expect to buy a $400 shelter dog and come home with a dog that has spent thousands in training for because it bites, and then they don't want to give them all kinds of grief about returning it. There's something broken in both the shelter system and the breeding system. And the biggest problem, to be honest with you, is a nation that will spend $12 billion a year on dog toys and clothes and beds and crap, but has no idea about how to actually acquire a healthy, stable, temperamented dog and hold the people providing those dogs responsible for what they're getting. And I think a lot of us could be more helpful in that. I see a lot of, my own professional organization is more interested in controlling access to tools and training styles than it is in about how we acquire and provide healthy dogs to our communities and teach people what people don't even, that are kids now, people that are like under 40 in most cases, they don't even know what it's like to live with a dog in a way that isn't unnatural. I think Pam said dog relationships are very unnatural now. And I don't know, I tried very hard to do that, 5 clients at a time at our place, but it's a bigger picture. Matt, throw out a weird example. Somebody in a Facebook group yesterday or the day before asked about something about force-free training and why we shouldn't compare the success of it to marine mammals. And all the people that like to use tools and force holds our molecules together. Gravity's a force. We'd fall off the planet without it. There's nothing in the world. The whole term is not normal, but pure positive training, meaning we never apply anything negative at all, not even negative reinforcement, is not, why would that not work? And why shouldn't we apply it to marine training, where they, some people think that that's a very successful example. And I went through, I've studied marine training. There was a killer whale that, just happened to be called, or let's call him an orca, because there are a lot of killer whales that don't kill people. Right. But this Timilkin was his name. He killed somebody in, I think in Canada, Pacific, SeaWorld-y type of thing. They sold him and the 2 females that were involved with that whale, with killing a woman who was their trainer in the pool. they attacked her to death,
right,
throwing her around in circles and beating her up until she was dead, and they couldn't even get her body out of the pool for
right.
so many times.
Yeah.
And then anybody seen the movie Blackfish has seen this movie about Timilcom.
Yeah.
Then he went to SeaWorld. Somebody climbed in his tank. He killed that guy in the tank, probably dragged him under, but more than that. And then, what is it, 2010 maybe, he dragged a girl off the deck in front of a crowd by her ponytail because she didn't have any fish left for him, and drowned her. What they left out of those stories was that he was in mating season, and the two females in the pool with him in the very first time were both pregnant with his babies, his baby orca calves. When the guy jumped into the pool, a male trainer jumped into the pool, he killed the guy by biting his testicles off. He emasculated the man. This was that bull orca bred 21 babies on our future orcas that people are supposed to be jumping into the pool with. That whole picture, and in every single paper on those incidents, it's labeled as an accident. It's not labeled. We misunderstood what this wild animal's drives are. This predatory wild animal. To me, it is the quintessential. And to this day, every single thing you look up about those three incidents, and the two females, one of them tried to kill somebody twice before the incident with Timilcom in his pool. So this huge skewing of the idea of how we live with captive or domesticated or whatever predators in human animal husbandry is completely skewed to the point that when people are dying, they're still writing fantasies about how they played with this woman so long she died. That's what it says in the coroner's report for the first lady. That we're seeing the same things with dogs. People are dismissing the deaths. They're trying to ban it. Nobody's saying, oh, you had 5 pit bulls that are completely unfulfilled, locked in kennels in your yard, and they escaped and they're hunting the neighborhood. They're going to blame it on pit bulls. But nobody's holding owners, shelters, breeders, anybody. They're not. It's like a diminishing concern for the welfare and the actual, brain and drives, and it's not a stuffed animal. I can't understand that. This is like fantasy thinking about either one of these species that we have the care of.
I was just going to add to that. I think the genetics is a big. I think the genetics is a big thing with dogs, and then not to get too off topic, but to kind of go along with what you're saying with the orcas. I read a recent story, and I don't know the details exactly, but I can give you the general overview. They've actually studied this, and they've shown that there's actually different types of orcas. Ones that are highly intelligent, and ones that are just, I guess, call them average, whatever. And the difference between the two is the average ones, wherever they call home, that's it. They don't migrate, go anywhere else. They call home and they feed on the smaller fish. Whereas the ones that are highly intelligent, they swim in small pods of, let's say, 4 to 6 together. And what they'll go and attack a blue whale or a humpback whale or a large animal, and they'll work on that for hours. And they work intelligent, and they do it in a very methodical way, and they, all that kind of stuff. So with that, and same with dogs, I think we're trying to mold them into the way we want. We're changing the different breeds and so forth, and the designer dogs and all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
And I think what we have to do is kind of shift our focus. And I've read some articles recently in some of my newsletters where us trainers are thinking this way, where it's rather than thinking about, well, we got to change behavior first and think that's the first thing we got to do, because 9 times out of 10 we get calls like, how do I get my dog to stop doing this? Jumping, barking, lunging. Can you fix this? Can you fix that? Whereas, yes, those are important things. And sometimes we have to change behavior. Sometimes we don't, or it can be managed. But other times I think the first thing we have to think about is that relationship between us humans and the dog.
Sure.
And what their thoughts are. I think that's what it boils down to. And if you can do that, as far as that goes, everything from the dog's sleep to nutrition, to what they're doing in their daily lives, to mental stimulation. If all those kind of things aren't really factored in or aren't really met, then obviously that's going to have an effect, obviously, on behavior.
And
so,
Joyce,
I think.
I'm sorry. I just,
No, go ahead.
when you said lifestyle or something that reminded
People
me of
and
that
the relationship.
relationship. I know Joyce, you know, her, from what I know of her whole thing is lifestyle training with, you know, and she's taking it a client at a time to try to get that dog to be comfortable in the home and the person to be comfortable with the dog and satisfy both their needs. So
yeah, because like what
I'm throwing
taking
the floor open to you, Joyce.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. It gets a little noisy around here.
That's all right.
And I know you do a lot of rescue.
Yeah, well, this is the dogs I'm working with today. They're ready to go out. So yeah, I have this conversation with people all the time, you know, with clients, friends, whatever, because it's a big problem. I think people feel should have a dog just because I want a dog. They don't really see it as the responsibility
yeah.
They don't take into consideration the very large responsibility it is. They don't take into consideration that this is another living being that has a personality, a temperament, likes, dislikes, has a genetics, inherited, just inherited things that go along with it, and that each and every one of them is an individual. And I think if we can't get people to start considering how big of a responsibility it is to have a dog and what comes with that, we're just going to continually be down this road, because, we all say it back in the day, whatever the day was, when people got dogs, they generally had a reason for having that dog, whether they had a farm or they hunted or whatever they did. There was a reason that they had that dog. And then gradually over time it became, I want a companion dog. And there were companion dogs. I mean, there's the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. What the heck are they good for except for decorating a lap? And there's several other of those fun little decorative breeds that are great companion dogs. But then you get the Beagle, and they're adorable. They're sweet. They're friendly. They're great with other dogs, and people lock them up in houses and then get mad at them because they bay and they dig and they act like beagles. And so on a trainer side of things, I want to stick with that. What can we do? Part of it is, I think all we can do is do the best that we can, person by person, whatever organizations we're working with, keeping them accountable. I work with a lot of veterinarians, so helping them when we have a joint client, keep that communication, very honest and not, I think a lot of it, we're trying to just keep the client. And I don't work that way. I tell people up front, I said, you may not like what I'm going to say to you. You may end up not liking me at all, but I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to
sugarcoat it,
cherry pick anything. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, because you need to hear the truth. And so it's, I think, all we as trainers can do is within our own little world, just educate the people we come in contact with and the organizations, that we deal with. There's the big picture is hard, unless there gets to be government intervention where, people are held accountable for the litters that they breed. Like over in Europe, I'm not sure if it's still this way, but they used to have to get permission from the government to breed two dogs together. The government had to they had to check the pedigree and make sure that this was going to be a good breeding, and then they'd give them permission to breed.
Well, the dogs had to pass tests.
Yeah, I mean, depends
on which country.
Right. Well, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know the full story. This is just something my dad told me. He lives over in Germany, so he was telling me about the policies over there. And I was like, that I doubt we'll ever get to anything that strict ever again. But this idea that somebody should be able to take their dog and breed it to whoever they want and create a new breed or a new look, or, I just want a puppy, so I'm going to have 10. So, I get my puppy and be damned with whatever else happens to him. I just don't see this ever getting to a point where it calms down unless there is some massive government intervention of some kind. And I hate that, because I think we already have enough government intervention in almost everything that we do. but there just doesn't seem to be any common sense to any of this.
Right.
And it's all I want society.
Well, one of the things I think that we can do as trainers, as I'm hearing what everybody's saying, and as I'm thinking about things I've done in the past and opportunities and such, when we have opportunities, we need to take them. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when I was training assistance dogs, I spent 20 years as a volunteer with an assistance dog organization. I found myself somehow invited to a career day in a school. And I thought, I'm a volunteer. This is a very strange thing to be invited to, is career day. So I turned it around. And every time I went to career day, and I did 5 or 10 of them every school year for several years, I went in and I talked about, okay, well, I'm a volunteer and there are some jobs you'll have that you won't make money on. But you know what? Let's turn this into how to interact with the dogs. And I taught all the kids that I interacted with how to approach the dogs, how to pet the dog, how not to pet a dog, how if you're going to have a dog, maybe you want to hire a dog trainer, maybe you want to hire a groomer, maybe you need a veterinarian. Those are all jobs around dogs. And so I made a list of, off the top of my head, 10 or 15 jobs people have around dogs. Mm-hmm. And maybe when you grow up, you want to be a groomer or a professional handler or a dog trainer, or this book that I'm holding up here, this was written by a guy who trains dogs. And so he's an author now too. Or there's somebody that illustrated it. And maybe that's another way. So maybe it's opportunities to speak to kids in schools. Maybe it's opportunities to join a networking group in your community for professionals. And you're not there so much looking for leads as you are just looking to educate everybody in there that are other professionals about dogs. Mm-hmm. Those are unfortunately the kinds of things we all need to be doing, in addition to our one-on-one with our clients and with each individual dog and that kind of thing. I think the way we make a change is to get out there and speak to the greater community and, you know, try and share that information with them. That's the only way, you know, I think that we can move forward, is just to get out there and talk to people. And I know talking to people is the worst thing. Nobody likes doing it.
I think that I sounded really angry about my Shamu, the killer whale thing. I did a lot of studying on that, and I realized how many correlations are. But in actuality, what Joyce said, I teach at the Canine Human Relationship Institute, as a dog training institute based on total ethology training of dogs in Texas. And then Joel and Bonnie participate in our group Sunday classes, which many of our clients who've been with us for years, they don't even leave the program. We don't work so much on obedience. We work a lot on building the relationship. How does the dog perceive the world? Why is this happening in your world? How can we help him understand how to live a bit better with it while still respecting who the dog is? And we have everything from Chihuahua to Great Dane to very primitive, they're elk hound. My Malinois one of them comes, you know, sometimes, and rescue dogs, pit bull, Ridgeback, every kind of dog in there, and border collies and doodles, and all of those dogs, everybody's, because it's almost like therapy as well. We have circular questions every week about what are you working on with your dog this week? How are we succeeding with that? How one client whose dog all of a sudden is doing something new that unexpected will be easier to train that away because the dog hasn't super practiced it and it doesn't really fall in their drive, where somebody else has been practicing a behavior for a couple of years with their dog, they want to change, it's going to be harder. Mm-hmm. And I found that class to be the most rewarding hour of my week. And I hope, and there's more and more of our clients that are coming, and regularly even coming in the rain to do it. And I think that if people could come at dog training from a relationship-based perspective more often. I'm really glad Joyce brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, and thank you to all of you. I mean, look how long we've been, Dog Trainers Connection has been bringing trainers together to discuss issues like this. And you all are really important in the world of dog training and getting this our voices out there.
Yeah.
I have two questions I want to pose to the group, and not necessarily for the group, but for viewers who are watching this. Okay. And it's really at the core of, how we can fix whatever's broken, right? How many of us, please, by a show of hands, humor me, right? Whether you're doing private sessions or group classes, how many of us give our clients specific instructions and/or homework? Please raise your hand. Everybody? Okay. Okay. Second question. How many of us have 100% compliance from our clients? Nobody? Nobody? Come on, I find that really hard to believe. And now my short commentary, this is the truth. Okay, so we as dog trainers, we do not have 100% compliance from our clients.
Sure.
I could tell you, and I know a very small group of breeders in my life. I know who they are and what they do. And the shit they send home with their puppies is not followed through. And the rescues I work with also give specific instruction and care, potential triggers, behavior, and oftentimes training vouchers or even dogs that are already trained. But you just saw our group here. We all do the same thing, and we all do not have 100% compliance from our clients. But so like Pam and everybody else said, we just do the best we can.
And I think that, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and the reward for us is those people that do listen and follow through, and just to end it on a positive note. How many of you have clients that you loved and love you and talk about you years after they worked with you? I think everybody here can raise their hand on that.
I always understand I'm not going to get 100% compliance, and I really do like to think that if someone's non-compliant, I'm maybe not understanding a part of their picture, that I can help them come at it from another perspective. I don't get upset about non-compliance. I try to build more understanding when that happens, or they run into trouble because I want to always take it on my responsibility to try and make it somewhat easier to fit into a lifestyle that's not the same as when I had dogs when I was a kid, and or the dogs are different, or they're disabled and they can't do that, or whatever it is, to try to find a way to help and then be super happy when I get 50% compliance, because the dog's always winning in that case. Yeah. That I think that's really important.
I was going to say along those same lines, it's like sometimes I blame myself because maybe I'm giving them too much homework, or maybe, they're entitled to have the dog. They do the right thing. They try to do the right thing and everything else, but they only have so much time. Obviously if there's not enough time at all and they're not putting any effort, they shouldn't have dogs. They don't deserve to have a dog. But assuming they have at least the basic and a little bit beyond the basic reasonings to have a dog, maybe I'm just giving them too much to do. And maybe I have to break it down to, smaller steps and smaller amount of training. That's all.
George, somebody's got to pee, Joyce.
Too much coffee.
He's saying,
I think he's talking about the dog.
Oh.
I think that's an interesting place to stop.
I was gonna say which one, but
so I know we made this conversation a long conversation, but I'm glad we did, because I think we really talked about it a lot. We've talked about this topic a lot, and I hope that people watching this get some knowledge from it, and can hopefully pass that on to others, as everybody on here does every time we do get together and discuss things. Because with that knowledge, and hopefully with that knowledge out there, maybe just a little bit can fix that dog culture a little bit at a time. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here, trainers. I want to thank everybody for watching. And like I said, I really do hope that people do talk about this. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up for this video, like us on Facebook, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. And we probably won't see you before then, so have a good holiday to everybody, and we'll see you in the new year.
Happy
Bye-bye,
holidays,
folks.
Thank you.